Hey guys, it's Jan, Not a Real Farm. So this morning as I'm pouring coffee, it's actually minus 48 out this morning. And I was gonna go out and take a picture or video of the thermometer, but I thought you'll probably just take my word for it. It's gonna be sunny, but it's not gonna be a day that we're gonna be able to do anything outside. The purpose of today's video actually is really just to discuss weather swings and the different types of weather that have been going on around Canada and even the United States, as if you've been paying attention to the different weather swings and what we're experiencing. So as you know, if you watched some of my videos from last summer, you would see that I experienced drought like I've never experienced before. The drought that I experienced actually was, I went almost 41 days without an actual significant amount of rain. So what was happening was I had a lot of high water needs vegetables that were needing my attention constantly. And in most cases, especially in the greenhouse, I was going out and watering almost, 2-3 times a day. So that kind of leads me into, like I said, the different weather swings and things that we're going to be experiencing or have experienced in the past, in our different countries. And I'm reading a book right now, actually called Prairie Fires. And it is an experience like I've never read. Most of us grew up reading Laura Ingalls Wilder, but we read a lot of happy things in the book. This particular author, Carolyn Fraser, really outlines the extraordinary bouts of difficulty that this particular family went through in their time, including moving back from Minnesota, moving to North Dakota, moving to South Dakota, and Wisconsin, and how Laura Ingalls as a child felt based on her experiences and looking through the eyes of a child. But as she got older, the accounts of what happened and where the family traveled and their experiences and the difficulties they went through were constant. And a lot of that had to do with weather. So 1875, this is how far back we're going, was supposed to be a prosperous year for the Ingalls, and what they experienced was, according to this book, a cloud that consisted of 3.5 trillion insects, locusts. So basically, one of the sayings back then was they ate everything but the mortgage. Everybody lost everything to the point of devastation. So the reason I guess why I'm discussing this with you is the fact that we have to recognize that we have no control over Mother Nature. No matter how hard we try, Mother Nature will do what she wants when she wants. So as far as the book details is that at this time, a lot of the farmers were trying to cover their crops with anything that they had to try and save whatever they had. And the locusts were actually eating through the canvases on their wagons. They were eating the wool off of the sheep. They ate right through the coats or the shawls or blankets or anything that were put on the ground. And then after that point, once they decimated the crops, they actually laid eggs in the ground, and they re-experienced this particular tragedy the very next year. So once they experienced this for the second time, the promise of the railroad came up, and the Ingalls followed the railroad basically out to Dakota Territory. And what they didn't know at that time was Dakota Territory was very dry, and they've never experienced that before in terms of how much rainfall per year, just that the territory didn't get. So this is out of the book itself. I'm just gonna read a really short excerpt to show you what type of weather they were experiencing even at that time back in 1873. But the greatest deterrent to farming in the northern Great Plains was obvious. The place was parched. Well-watered areas south and farther west were snapped up, but farmers shied away from the Dakota Plains. They knew they were too dry. The Great Plains occupy the interior of the continent. Indeed, most of the world's great grasslands in Siberia, East Africa, Brazil, lie far from the ocean's downwind of mountain ranges. The air masses that reach the Great Plains from the Arctic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico have been stripped of moisture by the time they get there, leaving their payload of rain and snow miles behind in the coastal range and the Rockies. Swept by powerful, desiccating winds, the plains routinely experience bizarrely variable weather. They receive precipitation at wildly shifting times and in varying ways. Out on the plains, there is no normal. And that is true. That's why, I did the video. That's funny because there is a saying, you wait 5 minutes and the weather changes here. And that is true. 1 minute you could be getting snow and then all of a sudden, it's sunny, or maybe there's a little bit of rain and then it's sunny. And the dirt here does not absorb the water. It's almost like a sandy beach here. So that's why I chose to grow in raised beds, because for me, I found it very difficult to try and plant in the ground because it does not absorb the water. No matter what you do, it does not absorb the water. So going through this book, just a little ways down, this is on page 95, if anyone actually has this book, Meriwether Lewis called the area that would become North Dakota truly a desert, barren country. And further down, he's working with Wesley Powell, to try and communicate, what's sort of happening for farmers if they try to, purchase new plots of land to grow out there. And Powell is presenting, maps in different areas to try and show where the rain is, so that if you were purchasing plots of land, that you would be purchasing something, that you could obviously grow properly on. And here it says, with his charts and maps, Powell was delivering a bombshell, the news that less than 3% of the arid West was suitable for farming. So this is where, I guess where I'm going with this, is that we now have to plant according to the weather. And what I mean by that is having certain seeds that are high, medium, and low water needs. In my area, where I am in Manitoba, it's probably a good thing for me to have seeds that can survive in, sort of dry desert conditions, because we have that. So we're going to be trying to grow a lot of seeds this year from Africa for experimental purposes, and just seeing how some of those low water needs seeds survive. I think it's important to pay attention to your weather and have those, your same seeds that may have worked for you last year, but also have a backup. So if you are planting and it happens to be one year where you don't receive, that significant rainfall that you normally would get, you have sort of that other garden that acts as your backup. And I think that's very important, considering that the weather is very sporadic and it does change depending on where you live. So the weather is not necessarily the same. This winter, for example, we've experienced it way colder, a lot longer, and way more snow than we've had. I believe I heard somebody say that this is the most snow that we've had here since 2011. I think we're gonna have to start planting our crops according to the weather. And this is where having a garden journal would help you. What kind of weather did you experience last year in the summertime to the fall? How much inches of rain did you get? It's very interesting to see what would happen if you tracked your weather. Now, last year, like I said, I had a really terrible dry summer. Maybe this summer I'll have experience a wet spring. I know it's definitely gonna be a damp spring for sure with all the snow that we have. But because my soil is so sandy, this will dry out in 3 weeks, and then we're right back to, those dry, parched lands. So it's really important for me to understand the weather patterns so that I can grow different seeds according to the weather conditions. So I'm gonna be, like I said, growing a lot of seeds that have to be grown in drought. For example, sesame seeds. Black sesame seeds need a bout of drought to actually develop their pods for their seeds. So we're going to be trying to grow that. I'm going to be growing an African eggplant. We're going to be growing just a whole bunch of different things. And I'm also going to be trying an upland rice, which does not require it to be flooded in order to grow. It actually needs that sandy soil in order to develop. So I'm trying to expand my mind a little bit and sort of move forward and grow according to the weather conditions, and not necessarily grow things where I'm having to use a lot of water. You can only water here in the mornings, and anybody that's living in this area or in the plains knows that, you sort of have to water either in the early evening or very early in the morning, because by about 10 o'clock here in the summertime, it can get up to be about 90 degrees outside for the heat. But the truth of the matter is you have to know to grow. And I'm constantly, always still learning something every day. I'm on a new piece of land. I came from a zone 5. So growing in a zone 3 can be a little bit more challenging than growing in a zone 5, but I'm doing it. So even though it's get going and get growing, you have to know to grow. And if you don't know, you can't grow. And that's my message for today, guys. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you have any questions, pop that down below. Thumbs up to subscribe, and see you soon.